first thing, Chris, actually, how did you find out about the story? How did you meet Janis, and when did you realize that this is the story for a documentary movie that can actually take years of research and making?
I think Slovenian Janis Kevar, he was retired Brigadier General of your mountain division and very passionate about the history of mountain troops. And he came across this story about the ski race on Mt Mangart, but also made a trip to the United States and noticed that it wasn't documented. And then he started digging deeper and noticed that the entire period where the Americans were on the border there was not documented correctly or properly, and in many cases mislabeled in photos. What was the Julian Alps, they were saying were the Dolomites. So he noticed all of that, and then somehow tracked me down thinking that I could do something with that information, and he was the one that inspired for me to explain the story better. But little did he know that he was talking to somebody that knew absolutely nothing. So Janis just kept pushing me. So as I said, this all started with a Slovenian and then grew to the motivation of Slovenians. And then everybody over here showed their passion so much that I felt that I could not let down everybody that came to me. So it was driven by the energy over here.
What was maybe the biggest challenge? The research that you need to make, of course, of those days in June in 1945, of course, or filming in Julian Alps. I guess this is also a big challenge for a documentary maker.
The entire thing was a challenge, first of all, because I had no money, and I'd never made a film all by myself before. But the biggest challenge that quickly, again, showed me how Slovenia was involved was when Janis kept pushing me. And I go, to tell you the truth, we can't do anything without recreating the ski race because there was no archive footage. There was photos, but no archive film footage. So I kind of threw that back at Janis. I go, this is your responsibility. We need to recreate the ski race. Next thing I know, he's contacted me going, okay, I have the permits from the national park, I have the parliament behind it, I have the NATO behind it, I have everybody behind it, volunteers out of Bovets, everywhere, and they are ready to go when you're ready to come over. And I was like, so I thought, wow, I really put the challenge in front of somebody, and he followed through. He's over-delivering. So we picked a date, and then I reached out to some friends in Italy. I go, does anybody know any cameramen that I can hire for cheap? And this father-son showed up, and they said, we will help. And then all of a sudden, I flew over, and the day... it was raining, and then the day that we were supposed to go on Mangart, cleared up. And already there had been volunteers out of Bovets up there cleaning the road off, doing what they could, gathering gear, making the gates. It was unbelievable, the amount of volunteerism. And I showed up, and I was almost embarrassed because it's just me and two cameramen that I don't really know, and the dedication again, and I was like, oh man, I hope we can do something with this. And it was such a magical day that just sort of came together in every way. I don't know who was guiding us, something greater, but it by the end of the day, we went back down to Bovets, and all of a sudden I was in the middle of a celebration, again with the Slovenians, having, your food and your drink, and I was at that moment married to this project because the hardest part had been completed. So the rest would just come.
It's great to hear about this support that you had in Slovenia. Any questions from the audience? Just raise your hand and, of course, you'll get the microphone. Okay, don't be shy. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
How many times have you skied down Mangart?
How many times have I skied the mountain? I've only skied it twice. Well, and actually the first time was when we did the recreation, and I put all the soldiers on the old gear, and we realized how dangerous that was. Plus, I had a really bad knee, so I decided I'd be race director and not have to challenge myself on the course. And then we actually decided that they should probably be in their regular boots and skis, because I didn't want to injure anybody, which gives you even that much more respect for the equipment that they were skiing on. So then, if you notice, I tried to shoot from the feet up, of the soldiers skiing the course. And I asked them, I go, can you please try to duplicate the technique of how you would ski on wooden skis back then, rotating the upper body and everything, because the skis certainly didn't bend the way they do now. So that was the first time I was up there, and I skied down. And then the second time was when I got to go up there by the helicopter. And of course, you saw the snow was not great, but as explained, that was last minute. And I was literally driving out of town, ran into this Italian guide that I'd worked with 20 years prior, and in like 5 minutes, just asking him, is there any way I can fly to the top of Mangart? And he made a phone call, and next day we had a helicopter. So, but that's how the whole magic of the film came together. It was all just by these moments of chance.
Perfect. Thank you for the question. Another one.
I'm interested in this your research, which took 6 years, yes? You mentioned there was almost nothing documented.
Very little.
Photos, letters, into clips. How much did you find during your research something new? And where was this? I don't know, Italy, Slovenia, United States. Where did you find this?
I could go on and on for hours about this, but I'm going to give you some great stories. Once people with the social media these days started realizing that I was going down this rabbit hole, the information started coming like crazy, and it's still coming. And there's stuff like I'm depressed because I could add many more hours and more details, and because now grandkids are digging into their grandparents' records and finding out where they were during World War II and the roles they played. As we've learned, that generation didn't speak much. They came back from all this and all around the world. They got back to work, and we built the world back up, and the war was kind of suppressed. The heroics and the amazing stories of the men and women then were put away in closets. The grandkids are now finding it. I give you a great story though. This and this just shows how it has nothing to do with borders or even what your background is. But an Englishman from England who is a professor of history in the town of Torbole in Italy. So not even Italian, not American, reached out to me on Facebook and said, are you going to talk about the 25 men of the 10th Mountain Division that drowned in Lake Garda? And I had no clue. And he goes, well, I think it's important that you tell this story. It's missing. And he himself has done crowdfunding to raise money to put monuments up. Upon that, he also did a crowdfunding thing to hire a submarine to go look for the sunken amphibious vehicle, the Duck. This is, again, not even an American. He just wants to tell this story. And so I said, well, if you find, I was in the Venice airport ready to fly home. Again, I don't have backers, I don't have money or anything like that. I said, well, if you find it, am I allowed to use the footage? And he goes, I would certainly allow you to use the footage. By the time I landed back in the United States, he sent me a screenshot. They had found it. I was like, oh my goodness, I have to add now more onto this documentary that was originally just going to be about a ski race. Now I have to add more. And so I was like, how do I get back to Europe to then go meet this gentleman? My next flight, crashed. So I was in an airplane crash. That allowed me to get free plane tickets for all the rest of my coming back to Europe and doing the rest of the research for this film. So in a way, I have to say United Airlines is kind of a co-producer of the film because I got some free flights because of my plane crash. So that's, again, it's all been by fate. Every single thing, like I've been kind of on this just journey, just letting it pull me along. The only part that was again the most difficult is when do I stop it? And because at some point I just needed to make it a package. And I think that also happened because of COVID. COVID allowed the world to shut down for me to sit in a room and edit without any stress of that I was going to miss anything. So I edited for 5 months straight in isolation, 10 at night till 4 in the morning, and didn't feel like I was missing anything out there because nothing was happening. So it all happened for a reason.
Great to hear all those stories. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, please.
What's your favorite mountain to ski down?
What's my favorite mountain to ski down? I have many. I've skied all over the planet, but I have 5 moments that I really enjoy. And does everybody know where Tarvisio is? Yes. So there's Lusaris right there, and one of the most magical days I've ever had was on Lusari because as it started snowing really hard, everybody went in, and I was up there by myself, and I would ski this amazing run with deep snow and get to the lift, and the only reason the lift operator stayed there because I kept doing laps. It was like the Twilight Zone. I was thinking, how is this possible that nobody else is out here? So that became my favorite day.
Perfect. Thank you for the question. Yes, please.
Will there be a presentation of this movie in Italy?
The Alpine Club of Italy, we did it last February, and so it's subtitled in Italian, and it was done in Udine. I think it was February, I can't remember, 22nd or something. But now it's subtitled in Italian as well, and I also think the work that was put into the subtitling into Slovenian here. So 2 subtitles. Yeah, so some more as well. Well, now that it's subtitled, I want to share it as much as possible, but I also feel that it's important to do it live and in person, putting people in the theaters and personalizing it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned in the film that without this 10th mountain division, the history of the ski industry wouldn't be the same, which you related.
Absolutely. So I actually, so a little bit more about my background. I grew up skied in a ton of movies that in the United States are popular called the Warren Miller films. And I kind of make a reference there, which I realize probably doesn't mean much to hear, but every year for 70 years, a new ski film came out. During that process, I told a previous story about the 10th Mountain Division. It was post-World War II. And now there's a documentary that I also am part of called Climb to Glory that was done years ago, which led Janis to find me. So but the reason being is that in the United States, when the post-World War II, when the 10th Mountain Division came back, they're responsible for opening up 56 of our ski areas. They evolutionized the equipment. They were involved with everything from climbing gear to ski gear to clothing to opening up ski areas to running ski areas. They modernized what the ski industry we have in the United States today, as well as quite a bit of the outdoor industry. A lot of people may not know this, but Nike, the shoe, was founded and created, the first Nike shoe, by 10th Mountain Division. and many other outdoor companies. So it's hard to believe if you were to eliminate that whole group, what would have happened. The other sidebar to that is two things. If that unit wouldn't have been deployed against the Yugoslavian border, they were assigned to be the tip of the spear to go into the Pacific and do essentially another D-Day operation in Japan. The atomic bomb dropped. That stopped that action. But let's just say, in theory, that the 10th Mountain Division, no atomic bomb, would have been on the tip of the spear. The casualty rate would have been massive. Again, I do not know where our ski industry would be. You know, these are just like as many people we wonder we've lost what they could have contributed to the world. We do know for a fact what the survivors of the war have contributed, you know, and they call it the greatest generation for a reason, is after the war, many amazing things were created. So in my small world, I thank the ski industry to them.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
How long did,
Sorry.
how long did they stay at this under Mangart? Do you know the date from?
Yes, so the 10th Mountain Division, the ones that were there from May to July 1945. Then another unit of Americans came in and just stayed for a little while longer until everything was settled. But the 10th was there till July. Yes.
Was there a part 2 or?
I actually, there's another project I would love to work on that would involve this region again, and it'd be more, I think, the First World War, because the tie to what the mountain troops locally did in those mountains is unbelievable. Again, you know, you got to touch on the tragedy of war, but more on the human performance of how amazing being up in those mountains and what they established. So maybe there's a fun way to tell a story, an inspiring way, again, with skiing, touching on those amazing points of history. The other part that I would love to tell, but I do believe I would really need a real budget, is the woman Deborah Bankart that Michaela Schifrin talks about. Her life story is remarkable, and it went highly ignored. I mean, it was completely ignored in the history of the 10th Mountain Division. I just happened to come across it in the basement of our library in the archives because I came across a bunch of mentions of her name and eventually a box that had information about her in it. But it had been sitting down there not to be discovered other than just sitting there.
Great. Thanks for the questions. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Can we share this film with our family and friends?
And maybe a year and a half or so, because the other side note is how I produced this in the United States was as an educational programming, and I did it under my foundation. So I have the pictures you saw at the end are all from little kids. I have a foundation in the United States that underwrites education and bringing kids to experiences, especially those that are underprivileged, financially, challenged, into the environment. And so all the proceeds from this film go to fund that program. And right now, the best way I can do it is doing live events. So I'm going to do that for a while longer, and then give it to the world, streaming and stuff like that. But eventually it'll be there, and hopefully forever. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Why do you refer to Tito as a dictator?
I've been asked that now twice, and I guess that's how we were educated on it. But I've now learned since I've been here that it's I should have probably referred to him as a leader, not a dictator. And I guess in our American education, that's where he's classified. So it's very, it was brought to my attention. I wish I could go in and switch it, but but that's it brings up a wonderful discussion point too. So yes, now every time I've shown it here, I'm wondering who's who's paying attention. Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
So if you would allow me just to thank you for this great story. I'm Mark from the foreign ministry. I'm also a skier, climber, mountaineer, and I'm so glad to hear that somebody from the States came here and is now explaining through the Europe and in the States about the story which connects Europe and America, Slovenia and America. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's been such a wonderful journey for me. And I didn't maybe get into it in detail, but the Camp Hale, where the 10th trained, is 30 miles from my home there. And I've been coming over to Tarvisio Valbruna for 28 years as a guest of my Italian friend and skiing over here. Of course, I love the two environments because of the snow and the mountains, and skiing bonds us all. But this story then found me later and still combines the two locations is pretty magical to me. All because of alpinism and skiing. Yep.
Thank you all for questions and, of course, for the opinions. And thank you, Mr. Chris Anthony, for showing us this great movie. And we are really glad that those stories from our part of the world interest you, and looking forward for your next documentaries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you again.
Thanks.